Comes from John 10, verses 1 through 10. Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore Jesus said again, Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full.
Thank you. So as Rex kind of told you, I'm Rebecca Davila. I am Sarah's daughter. I am the coordinator of youth, college, and family ministries at St. John's United Methodist Church in Corpus Christi. So I'm a little ways from home. I don't preach very often, but I do work with kids. And so this may be a little different than a typical sermon, but bear with me. You'll enjoy it. It'll be good. I promise. So there's something interesting. I forgot something, my prop, because, youth ministers always have a prop. There's something interesting about how we receive a phone call. Everybody's has a phone, knows what phone calls you get. So have you ever gotten a phone call from an unknown number? Okay, I was like, we're alive out there, right? And you just stare at it for a moment, and you watch it ring and ring and ring, and you're like, I wonder if it's important. And you debate whether you're going to answer it or you're just going to let it go to voicemail. And then it goes to voicemail, and you're like, okay, what was it? And you go listen to it, and you're like, dang it was the doctor's office. I should have answered that. There's always that question in the back of your head, do I trust this call? Do I trust this voice? But then there's other calls that we get, the ones that we don't hesitate to answer. You see the name, and before it finishes the first ring, you've already picked up and you're mid-conversation. There's no hesitation, no second guessing, not because it's louder, not because it's more urgent, but because you know who it is. You recognize the voice. And that recognition changes everything about how you respond. In our passage today, Jesus gives us this image of shepherd and his sheep. And at the center of this is the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Now slow down. He calls them by name. Not as a group, not as a number, but personally. Jesus begins by talking about thieves and robbers and bandits, those who don't enter through the gate, but try to get in by another way. And right from the beginning, we're reminded not every voice that reaches our ears is the one we should follow, because we live in a world full of voices. Voices that tell us who we are. Voices that tell us what we should be. Voices that tell us what matters most. But some of the most powerful ones are the most quiet. What about the voice that says you're not good enough? The voice says you need to be more. The voice that says you won't quite measure up. And the hard part is those voices don't always sound wrong. Sometimes they sound responsible, reasonable, motivating. But Jesus names what they do. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And we've seen that. Voices that steal our peace. Voices that chip away at our joy. Voices that reshape how we see ourselves. Slowly, quietly, over time. Until one day we realize we've been listening to something that was never leading us towards life. So the voice that you trust will shape the life that you live. There was a moment in youth and college ministry that's stayed with me for a while. We were in the middle of a normal youth gathering. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just time together, a lesson, conversation. And someone said something that shifted the entire room, the entire conversation. They said, "I just feel like I'm not good enough." And everything got quiet. Because you could tell that this wasn't just one person. It was something that everybody in that room had felt too. And honestly, it's not just the students or the young people. Us adults have felt that, heard that. Maybe it's not those exact words. Maybe it sounds like a comparison, pressure. Maybe it sounds like quiet disappointment, like the look your mom gives you. But it's there. And what stuck with me in this moment is that voice didn't show up all at once. It's been there over time, repeated, reinforced, believed, until it started sounding true. And I think that's how a lot of voices in our lives work. If we hear them long enough, we stop questioning them. If we hear them often enough, we start trusting them. So again, the voice that you trust will shape the life that you lead. Jesus says, the sheep hear his voice and they follow him. Not because they're forced to, but because they know him. So who in here knows anything about sheep? We got one. All right. Y'all are going to learn something. So sheep don't just follow anyone. They wait for the voice that they recognize. They wait for their shepherd. So in biblical times, the shepherds would put all their sheep in one pasture for the night. And so one shepherd would watch the entire flock of all these different sheep. And then all the shepherds would come back and they'd say, "My sheep, come on over." And they'd follow just that one shepherd and leave all the others. They wouldn't go just because, hey, that sounds, I've heard that voice. No, I know that voice. That's my shepherd. That's how they would call their shepherd. And so they wait for this voice that they recognize, that they know. And that recognition comes from relationship. Time, presence, consistency. And it's the same for the rest of us. We don't recognize the voice of Christ by accident. We recognize it by spending time with him. And over time, something shifts. We begin to notice that God's voice sounds different. It doesn't rush us. It doesn't shame us. It doesn't leave us anxious. It leads. It steadies. It calls us by name. So in our passage, Jesus then shifts the image and says, "I am the gate for the sheep." So this is where we kind of need to slow down because there's more happening here than we really realize. So in this sheep gate, that all the sheep were in. It was just one big pasture with an open gate. There's not a gate to swing closed. There's not just things to build a barricade. What Jesus is telling us is a metaphor. Because all these people that he's preaching to know what this sheep gate looks like. And he's describing something very real. So instead of closing that door, building that barrier, the shepherd himself would lay across that entrance. The shepherd became the gate. That means something important. Nothing came in without going through the shepherd. Nothing went out without going through the shepherd. And if something wanted to harm the sheep, it had to face the shepherd first. And if a sheep wandered, it had to step over the shepherd. So when Jesus says, I am the gate, he's saying, I am the one who stands between what you and what's going to harm you. I am the one who guards what comes into your life and what takes hold in your life. I am the one who keeps watch, even when you realize when you don't realize you need it. And sometimes I think we hear that, and then we move on way too quickly. Because we like this idea as Jesus as a guide. But it's deeper than guidance. This is protection, presence. This is commitment. This is a shepherd who doesn't step away during the night. This is a shepherd who doesn't leave the sheep to figure it out on their own. This is a shepherd who places himself between the sheep and anything that would harm them. And then Jesus says this, whoever enters by me will be saved and come in and go out and find pasture. There's freedom here. Notice that, come in and go out. This is not restriction. This is not confinement. This is safety that allows for freedom. Because when you know you are secure, you are free to live. And then we hear this promise, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Not barely getting by, not constantly striving, not always wondering if you're good enough, but a life that is full, life that is rooted in being known, life that is grounded in love, life that is shaped not by every voice, but by his. So we come back to this quiet question. Which voice are we following? Not just in big decisions, but in the small, everyday moments. When something goes wrong, what voice speaks first? When you think about who you are, what voice defines that? Because we're always listening to something. The question is not if we are being shaped. It's by what. So again, the voice you trust will shape the life that you live. Every day, voices call for our attention. Some we hesitate to trust. Some we follow without realizing it. But Jesus is not an unknown voice. He's the shepherd who knows us, the one who calls us by name, the one who lays at the gate and leads us towards life. And over time, as we draw closer to him, his voice becomes the one we recognize. the one we trust, the one we follow. Amen. Pray with me. Gracious God, in a world full of voices, help us to hear yours clearly. Draw us closer to you, that we may recognize your voice and trust where you lead. Stand guard over our hearts and minds, and guide us into the life you promise, full and abundant in you. Amen.